Okay, so I think we have our guest is with us right now. Hello, Aleem Karmali.
Hello, Jalal Ladak. How are you?
Good, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm doing well. Thank you.
So, Aleem Karmali, like of course, we'll be talking about your the documentary movie Thrown into Canada. And like I said earlier in my intro, this is your first time on our show. Why don't we start with your intro? Who is Aleem Karmali? Please.
So I am a documentary filmmaker from Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in it.
I feel sorry for you, man. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I have to expect that.
Of course, calling on the Calgary radio station, of course, it will come to you.
And I don't know what to say. I mean, I have two kids, 7 and 5, and I have my background is in communication studies, but I also I studied Islamic studies, and sort of try and put those things together, the filmmaking and all these different things that I've studied, sociology and anthropology.
You're right.
To try and look at culture and religion.
Yeah. So why movies? Like, why you wanna, let's say, like, why documentary movies? Like, why not hockey, or why not some other things, or singing, music? But why movies?
I think I was always really interested, even when I go back to my childhood. I mean, two things that I've always been interested in, I would say, were writing and writing and storytelling, and then film. So, even when I was little, I don't know what age, maybe 6 or 7, I used to make these little storybooks and things like that, and I was always writing stories and that kind of thing. And so, and I think I just always was interested. I even remember being a kid and watching, World War I and World War II documentaries, in the library and that kind of thing.
Wow.
And just being interested in history and history documentaries. I just got interested in, I remember going to Los Angeles as a 10-year-old and seeing Universal Studios and how they made movies and all this kind of thing.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I just became really interested in film, and so I eventually went down that path.
So is this your first movie?
No, I've been doing this for about 20 years, actually. 20
years? So how old are you, if you don't mind? Because you look very young on the picture.
43.
Okay. So not that young or old. Okay, but like you were doing it for the last 20 years. Oh wow. So which one was like your first movie? Which one was it?
It started off doing kind of short films. So I started off doing fiction, and then I started to, I would just do these little short films, whatever.
Right.
Thing came to my mind. And then I started volunteering.
Okay, one. Yeah, where's this person? Yes, oh wow. Okay, go ahead, sorry. Yes, Aleem, go ahead. Maybe you want to speak up a little bit, I cannot hear you. Very slow. This is better, yeah.
Broader Muslim community, and I started doing projects for these different organizations, sort of documentary style projects, and that's where I sort of became interested in documentary and seeing, especially in that, I graduated from my undergrad sort of a few months before 9/11 happened, and then so seeing the way that the media stories were telling the stories about Muslims, about Muslim culture, Muslim history. I just sort of felt that we need more actual Muslims telling these stories.
Right.
And so I started to see that, and so then I decided to pursue sort of a postgraduate Islamic studies program, and then trying to put that together with filmmaking.
Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, like I'm sure, like, you know, when you do all these this kind of movies, it's not cheap. So how do you get funds, or like, is it anything from the government of Alberta, anything from the federal government, or you just do your own?
Yeah, so this film that I just released, just finished, thrown into Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this one was funded by government arts grants, so Alberta Foundation for the Arts and Edmonton Arts Council.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's government grants, sometimes it might be an organization sort of supporting it.
Right.
So I've done a number of projects for the 𝗬𝗟𝗫𝗀 TV and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So which one were the one you released on 𝗬𝗟𝗫𝗀 TV? Which one was it? Do you know? Do you remember the name?
Yeah. So there's a few. So there was one that I did in 2019 was the centennial of the 𝗬𝗟𝗫𝗀𝗀 Volunteer Corps.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we did a history of it's called a Century of Service. So it's a history of the 𝗬𝗟𝗫𝗀𝗀 volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
At the time of the Aga Khan's
Jubilee, yeah,
2017, I did a film that was shown just before the ceremony was shown. There was a film about the history of Jubilees called Heritage and Homage. So I did that, and then during the pandemic, because a lot of the education shifted to online,
right?
Obviously, places of worship and everything was closed, and so,
right.
Looking at how do you celebrate this festivals online, we did a film called A Guiding Light, which is a history of the 𝗬𝗟𝗫𝗀𝗍𝗓, explaining the background of the 𝗬𝗟𝗫𝗍𝗓 and the history and all of that.
Oh, nice. So I'm sure, you are getting some kind of the family help, because it's not possible if you are doing it, because, like I said, you have 2 kids, and of course, you have your own family, then you are doing all these on the side, plus you are working. Am I right? Do you work on the other side?
Well, I mean, so the film stuff is, about a year ago, I left. I was actually working for the 𝗬𝗟𝗫𝗀𝗀 community in religious education, so it's not really a film thing.
Okay.
Although I would sometimes do projects as part of that.
Okay.
And then I left that role last year.
Okay.
After I got this grant funding, and then I also do sort of freelance video production work.
Oh, okay, got it. Nice. So, about this movie, the one you just the new your documentary releasing on January 21st in Calgary, thrown into Canada. So why don't we talk about this right now? So, what's in the movie? What do we expect?
Yeah, so the film is, it marks the 50th anniversary of the expulsion of Ugandan Asians from, in 1972, Idi Amin,
right,
expelled all of the South Asians from Uganda, and there was about 50,000 people that were expelled,
right,
and the majority, so I think about 29,000, ended up in the UK. And then about 15,000, maybe 10 to 15,000, went to South Asia, so India or Pakistan. And then the next largest country was actually Canada. Canada was asked to, if they would accept some refugees,
right,
and they took about 7,500. And so, there's a few things about this story. I mean, in some ways, it's a story that gets told a lot. You hear about, certain people 𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗀𝗧, the Lieutenant Governor of Alberta,
Yeah.
𝗦𝗛𝗔𝗏𝗏𝗀, who's a senator.
Senator, yeah.
In the Canadian Senate. And then you see all these business people. There's Omar Sajidina, who also did a film from CTV. And so you have, there's a number of people that have talked about this in media, and politics, and various things. So it's sort of remembered. But I wanted to look into it and sort of look at it from a different angle. Usually the story is told just from the perspective of the people who came to Canada.
Right.
And what I wanted to do was not only look at their perspective, but also look at it almost as a Canadian history film. Because this is a significant event in Canada's history.
True.
It's the first time that Canada ever accepted a major movement of non-European, non-white refugees. And so, we think today about Canada as this really multicultural sort of country, but when you go back into Canada's history, its history of immigration and refugee sort of movements is actually very much focused on Europeans. And they actually wouldn't allow, there's this famous episode in 1914, the SS 𝗃𝗏𝗧𝗦𝗛𝗏𝗃, this ship of Punjabis from British India who tried to come to Canada. And they were basically held off the port of Vancouver for 2 months, and they weren't allowed to come into the country, and they were never allowed to in. They were eventually sent back. And so Canada at that time had this very sort of exclusionary immigration policies. And they were very reticent even to take European refugees. When it came to refugees, there was, very, very sort of hesitant to take refugees at all. And when they did take refugees, it was generally only from European countries. And so this becomes like a major, when we think about today, Canada as a sort of multicultural or pluralistic place, where there's a lot of diversity. A lot of that conversation is actually shaped, and when we talk about refugees today, a lot of that is shaped by this Ugandan experience.
Yeah, and of course, now we know the Islamic community in Canada, it's so big right now. They are so very Canadian. They love what they do, or on the civic side as well as on the community level as well. And His Highness, he's spending so much time and effort here in Canada because of his multiculturalism here, and the government itself help a lot to raise this awareness as well. So Aleem, like in the movie, are we going to see any videos from when people were coming in like 50 years ago? It's like interviews from the people who migrated.
Yeah, so so I interviewed, I did about, I think, 16 interviews. So I interviewed, Her Honor 𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗀𝗪𝗀𝗪𝗀, and her husband also, Dr. 𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗀𝗪. I also interviewed 𝗦𝗛𝗔𝗏𝗪𝗀𝗪𝗀, the senator. But I also wanted to interview, so other people who came, not necessarily as prominent as them. And then also, academics and historians who were looking at some of these things about the history of the Ugandan Asians, the history of East Africa, the history of Canadian refugee movements. And the other thing is, when I was selecting people, one of the things that I realized, and it sort of picks up on what you were just saying, is one of the reasons so my family is actually from Kenya, not from Uganda. So I was but as a Canadian Ismaili, I looked back on this, and we sort of look back at 1972 as the beginning of the Ismaili community in Canada.
Yes, absolutely.
And what was interesting is that usually the only story that you often hear about is the Ismailis. And what I discovered as I was researching this is that there's actually, about 60% of the people that came to Canada were Smileys, but that means 40% were other communities, and so, about 20% were Goans, and then there's another 20% which is made up of a mix of, Hindus and Sikhs, other Muslim communities, etc. And so it's actually quite a diverse group. People tend to think of it as a Smiley, but it's actually quite a diverse group. And so I wanted to reflect that in my interviews as well. So making sure that I got interviews with Goans and Hindus, that was important.
Yeah. So is it the first time the one we see the movie on January 21st, or it's been released in Edmonton?
It was released in Edmonton, and it was also shown in a conference that was done at Carleton University, which was marking the 50th anniversary of the expulsion. And then the Waterloo Region Migration Film Festival.
Oh, nice.
In December. But this is the first time in Calgary.
The first time in Calgary. Yeah. So I think it's at 1 p.m. So how people can buy tickets, and what time they should be there?
So the tickets, there's an Eventbrite.
Eventbrite, yes.
Which I think you linked on your Facebook.
Yes.
So people can go there. The tickets are $10. And then the film is like a feature-length documentary, so it's 77 minutes. And then it will be followed by a panel discussion with myself and the Lieutenant Governor.
Oh, nice.
And so we'll have some discussion. And people can ask questions and that sort of thing.
So when you played the first time, what was your reaction? What was the feedback?
To the film?
When it released first.
I mean, a lot of the feedback that I've had has been fairly positive.
Awesome.
People, what I was really trying to do was tell a story that was the untold parts of the story. Look at some of the stereotypes and the myths about and sort of trying to be a bit more balanced, I think, in my approach. The other thing was to look at the historical background, because often when you hear these stories, people start with Idi Amin. He came to power and then he just kicked them out. And it rarely talks about why he did that. So I wanted to dig into that, to look at colonialism and the impact that colonialism had. And this interrelationship of colonialism in South Asia, in British India, in Uganda, and in Canada. All of three were British colonies. And that story connects people from three different continents. And as they move from South Asia to Uganda and then to Canada. And there's a sort of overarching impact of British colonialism that's sort of hanging over the entire story.
Have you been to Uganda yet, or Kenya, since you moved here, or since you were here?
So I've been to Kenya a few times. My grandmother still lives there. She's 77 years old. And I've been to Uganda once for another sort of research project that I was doing.
Nice.
I didn't go to Uganda for this film.
Got it. So, what's your future project look like? Are you working on any other film like after this?
I'm sort of looking at what my next project will be. I'm doing some freelance work.
Right.
Just sort of weighing my options and looking at what. I mean, I still want to keep promoting this film.
Yeah. So
start looking at the next one.
So the one you already worked on it for the last few years. So do you are they online? Have you posted online yet? On YouTube or something?
Yeah. So some of them. So I have a website, crescentproductions.com.
Okay, Crescent Productions.
So there's a number of films that are there. A lot of the stuff I've done for the 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗍 TV and Ugandan Development Network and things like that.
Nice. So, yeah. So is there anything you want to say, like the one I haven't asked you yet?
No, I think that covers it quite well.
Yeah. Awesome. So the movie is at Globe Cinema January 21st at 1 p.m. Calgary time, and you can buy the tickets online. It's Eventbrite link, the one I will post on my Facebook again, and will share with on my pages as well. Hopefully people can go and watch it, and I think it's going to be something to learn from the movie for sure. And of course, there's going to be question answer like we'll get a chance as well if you want to ask any question to either Aleem or either Lieutenant General 𝗟𝗏𝗧 Lakhani. She'll be there as well. So just last question. Last question. Was it too hard to get involved, 𝗟𝗏 Lakhani, as well as Mubina Senator?
Not really.
No,
𝗟𝗏 Lakhani, to be honest with you, I mean, she's from Edmonton,
right,
and she's from the Ismaili community,
right.
So long before she was the lieutenant governor, she was, part of the community.
Right.
She's a family friend of my parents.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
I reached out to her and I sort of said that I was working on this thing. I told, this is early on. I was saying, I was applying for funding.
Right.
And she was very supportive of it.
Oh, that's nice. Awesome.
And Mubina Jaffer, similarly, I reached out and she was quite excited to be part of it.
To be part of it. Awesome.
I had actually interviewed her father, her late father, in 2008 when I was in Uganda. And so it was an interesting thing to be able to interview her again.
Nice. No, inshallah, we'll see you on January 21st, and we'll come and say hi to you. And if you need anything, if you need anything in between, please let me know. But I'll be sharing on my pages and groups as well, and so we can get a good crowd there on January 21st.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you so much, Aleem. All the best to you, man. And so, if you ever do any movie in Pakistan, let me know. So I'll be part of it.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. All the best.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So, one and only Aleem Karmali from Crescent Productions, and of course, the movie is coming on January 21st at the Globe Cinema at 1 p.m. Calgary time. Tickets are available online at Eventbrite link. So I will be sharing that. So I will be sharing that on Facebook as well. So hopefully we'll have a good crowd on January 21st. January 21st, there's one more big event happening. जो है जमाल राजा लाइव इन कॉन्सर्ट एट द मिर्ची रेस्टोरेंट कैलगरी, जिसको ऑर्गेनाइज किया है ये नाचीज ने, जलाल लाडक ने. Yes, so tickets are available, and I think we are down to only 3 to 4 tables left. So you can text me for the tickets, 587-899-4786. Doors open at 6:30, dinner starts at 7:30, and the music program starts at 8:30 with my daughter Jalal Ladak. And then after that, Jamal Raja will be taking over the stage for next 2.5 hours to 3 hours. He'll be singing Bollywood hoga, upbeat dance music hoga, Sufian hoga, ghazal hoga, because he is a master of everything. So he'll be singing all kinds of genre. Hopefully you can join us. You can text me for the tickets, 587-899-4786. So ये था आज का program. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us for Salaam Namaste Calgary. जो सलमा जी आज नहीं आ सकी, she was a little sick, she was under the weather, so आज वो नहीं आई, but she'll be back inshallah next Tuesday. But I'll be back inshallah tomorrow with the Jalal's top 10. तो inshallah tomorrow at 5 o'clock. तो फिर मिलेंगे कल शाम को 5 से 6. Thank you so much everyone for listening. Salaam Namaste Calgary on Punjabi National Radio 94.7 FM. तो लेते हैं छोटा सी break के बाद I will be done. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Khuda Hafiz.
ਸੁਪਨਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਕਾਰ ਮਰਸੀਡੀਜ਼ ਖਰੀਦ ਕੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੇ ਸੁਪਨੇ ਸੱਚ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਰਸੀਡੀਜ਼ ਦੀ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡੀ ਡੀਲਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਕੈਲਗਰੀ 에ਅਰਪੋਰਟ